and welcome. I'm so excited that you're here joining me today because I have an incredible special guest and I'm so excited to feature her work. And that is the lovely Dr. Margaret Paul. Welcome, Margaret.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here with you.
So happy to have you here. I'm Michelle Marchant Johnson with Love Life Coaching, and I am blessed to work with extraordinary women throughout the world to help them to have exceptional relationships. And what I love about Margaret and her work is she has some of the most profound and significant work to help people to really be in a place of self-love and to be able to be ready for that kind of healthy, loving relationship that you want. So I'm really honored to feature her work. And so, Margaret, I do want to give you the official formal introduction, but for everybody watching here, we want to make sure you watch till the end, or be sure to check out in the description here a link, because Margaret has an incredible gift for all of you listening, and we'll tell you a little more about it at the end, but it's called 4 Mistakes That Block Self-Love in Relationships. So don't leave today without checking that out. So Margaret, just to give a little formal introduction for those of you who may not be as familiar, Dr. Margaret Paul is a best-selling author, relationship expert, and co-creator of the powerful inner bonding self-healing process. She has appeared on numerous radio and television shows, including Oprah. Her book titles include Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by You? I love that title, by the way, because you know what? That's one of the huge fears that comes up so often.
That's right.
I'm talking to women out there, they're afraid they're going to get swallowed up into the relationship. Right. Healing Your Aloneness, Inner Bonding. These are additional titles. And the recently released Diet for Divine Connection, the Inner Bonding Workbook, and 6 Steps to Total Healing. Margaret has successfully worked with hundreds of thousands around the world and taught classes and seminars for over 53 years. Margaret is also a member of the Transformational Leadership Council started by Jack Canfield. Now, Jack Canfield's another person that I just love and admire. In fact, just a little side note here before we dive in, Margaret, some of his work that I did at his Breakthrough to Success event years ago was so healing for me and really helped me in order to be ready for my amazing relationship that I've now enjoyed with my husband for the last 15 years. So I love his work too. So it seems like we resonate a lot here.
Right.
Yeah. So Margaret, I really would love for you to share a little bit just about the whole inner bonding process and some of the work that you do for people here and the significance of it and how it can make a big difference in the lives of people that are participating in or learning about your work.
So often I work with people who have had so much therapy. They've gone to workshops, they've read books, but they're still suffering with anxiety or depression. They have guilt and shame and anger and emptiness and aloneness, and their relationships are falling apart. They're really not very happy, and they just don't know why. They've done so much work, and they do not understand why they're not happy. And what they don't realize is that the real deeper source of their unhappiness is what I call self-abandonment. And this is the opposite of self-love. And most people, when they think of self-love, they think of, I'm going to take a hot bath, get my nails done, get a massage. Yeah, that's fine. But what we're talking about is learning how to take responsibility for our feelings, for our pain, for our joy, and how to learn the information that all of our feelings are giving us. It's so unfortunate in our society that people actually judge their feelings as being bad or wrong. There's something wrong with me if I'm anxious or depressed, and maybe I need a drug, instead of learning that these feelings are giving them information about how they're abandoning themselves. This is really vital information. So the inner bonding process is a powerful 6-step roadmap for learning about what the feelings are telling you, what the false beliefs are that lead to various forms of self-abandonment, what the truth is because we operate from false beliefs. We're limiting ourselves. But the truth is, what's loving to ourselves, how to connect with a higher source of love and truth, to take responsibility for ourselves so that we can fill ourselves up with love in order to share that love. So many people get into relationships thinking that it's about getting love. This person's going to love me. They're going to fill me up. They're going to make me feel safe and secure. Mm-hmm. Then the other person feels that way too. And then, of course, they're very disappointed because they're each trying to get the other person to give them what they need to be giving to themselves in order to be full of love to share. If we're not loving ourselves, we don't have love to share. And the sharing of love, I'm sure is the most wonderful experience in life. But how do we have love to share unless we know how to fill ourselves up with love first? So this is what the inner bonding process teaches people how to do.
Well, and it occurs to me as you were saying this too, Margaret, and I think your work is so important. Not only do we not have love to share, but we can't really receive love.
That's right.
When we don't have that. So if we have these, pains or unhealed wounds or limiting beliefs or things like that going on, even if love presents itself, we can't receive it. Not only can we not give it, but we can't receive it either. It's like trying to pour a gallon of water into a 1-cup container. There's no capacity to receive it because so often on some level, we don't believe that we're worthy of having that or that we're lovable. And so when it's offered, we can't take it in. We can't receive it.
No, and that's such a good point. People think that if only someone will love me, then I'll feel worthy. But I've worked with many people where people did love them, but it didn't do anything because as long as we're abandoning ourselves, there's no way we're going to feel worthy. So let me talk about the 4 ways that I have found that people generally abandon themselves.
Okay.
So when we were little, there was pain. Most of us had pain. I certainly had pain. And our feelings are in our body and we don't know how to handle them. So we learn to go up in our head. So most people are operating out of their head, completely ignoring their body. They've disconnected, they've dissociated from their feelings because they don't know how to learn from them or handle them. So one of the first things that people need to do, one of the major ways that they abandon themselves is they stay up in their head, completely ignoring their feelings. And that's why step 1 of inner bonding is learning to get back in your body and be aware of what you feel, which is what I call having your inner baby monitor on. Like you have a baby and you want to know when the baby cries so you can attend. You can attend to the baby. We want to know what's going on inside so that we can learn and take care of our feelings. So being in our head is one way, ignoring our feelings.
This detachment, the detachment from feeling.
Yeah, that's right. Detachment. And another way is most people have learned to judge themselves. Many of us were judged and we don't realize it, but we absorb from our parents the way they treated us and the way they treated themselves. And then we treat ourselves this way. And one of them is we judge ourselves. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I'm not, I'll always end up alone. There's something wrong with me. So many different judgments that we level at ourselves.
Yeah, in fact, can I just interject one little thing here? It reminds me of something that a client said to me not too long ago. She was talking about the judgments and the mean voice going on inside. And she said, you know what I realized? She said, I realized that doesn't even sound like my voice. It sounds like the voice of my mother and grandmother and what they said to me as when I was a child. She's like, I feel like I'm hearing their voices, but it's coming across as my voice in the head.
Well, that's right. One of the things that helps people is when I ask them, well, whose voice is that? Like you said, it was her mother's, and it can be both the mother or the father or siblings or whoever. But I say, okay, so what was your mother's name? And somebody said Celia. So I said, okay, when you hear that voice, say, oh, Celia's here.
Celia's here.
And that's helpful. See, it's helpful for them to see that because that voice is that ego wounded part of us. That's what we absorbed. And that's what took over and is in charge. That part of us just wants to control everything. They think, that part of us thinks that that's how we're going to be safe, is to control everything. And certainly self-judgment is a form of control. But it's, if people were to treat a child the way they treated themselves or others, it would be a disaster. It's a disaster on the inner level, the way people treat themselves. Now, the third way they abandon themselves is they turn to various addictions to numb out their feelings. And of course, our society has a ton of addictions, from substances to processes, activities, all kinds of things that people do to avoid feeling their feelings and taking responsibility for them. And the fourth way that really affects relationships, which is what we're talking about, is they make the other person responsible for their feelings. And this is like, let's say your feelings, think of your feelings as an inner child. You're handing that child over to somebody else to take care of. So if you have an actual child and you keep trying to get somebody else to take care of the child, which of course people who adopt the child out do, but if you want the child and yet you keep trying to get somebody else to take care of it, that child feels rejected, feels abandoned. And that's what happens on the inner level when we do that. So most people are abandoning themselves in all these four ways and then wondering why they feel so bad and why their relationships are falling apart.
Yeah. So powerful. So powerful. So I want to come back. Thank you for sharing those. I want to come back to this idea that you've put out there in terms of us taking responsibility, because the reason I want to just go a little deeper with this, Margaret, is I think for some people listening, they could be triggered a little by that, by thinking, well, it's, this terrible thing happened to me, or this person really did hurt me in this way. And so taking responsibility is taking responsibility, not for what they did,
or no,
taking responsibility for your own feelings and healing. Can you go into that a little more?
So in inner bonding, we distinguish between two kinds of feelings. One is the feelings we cause, which we call the wounded feelings. And these are the feelings caused by self-abandonment, like anxiety, depression, guilt, shame, anger, aloneness, emptiness, jealousy. These are all feelings we cause when we abandon ourselves. But then there's the deeper, painful feelings of life, the loneliness we feel when we want to connect and nobody's there to connect to, or whoever's there is not available, the grief when we lose people we love, the heartbreak when people are mean, when they're hurting you or themselves or others, and the helplessness over others and how they're being in the world, how they're being with us, and some of the other feelings like sorrow. But these are the deeper feelings. Now, we don't cause these. We don't cause other people to be mean, to be unloving, to be hurtful. And when people are, it hurts our heart. And it hurts my heart, even if I don't know the person. If I see people being mean, it hurts, but I'm still responsible for that. So like in a relationship, somebody might be very hurtful to you. They might call you names, put you down, do all kinds of mean things, but trying to get them to deal with it leads you into all kinds of controlling behavior. You're trying to control what you cannot control. And so taking responsibility for your feelings doesn't mean that you're taking responsibility for their behavior or condoning it in any way. But it does mean that you're willing to learn to be very compassionate with yourself, because these very painful feelings need our compassion. They need us to name them, to recognize them. When I get hurt, when my heart hurts, I say to my little girl inside, "Oh, honey, I know that just hurts you so much. And I want you to know I'm right here with you. I'm not going to leave you alone with it." And see, that's really important, is that most people have learned to leave themselves alone with it. And then they cause the wounded feelings, the anxiety and depression on top of these painful feelings of life. And so what I do is I I teach people how to open to a higher source of love. I invite that in so that I'm not alone. I imagine I'm being held by loving arms. I'm holding my feelings. I'm letting those feelings know that I'm here. I'm an adult. I'm here, and I'm not going to leave you alone with them. And I'll stay with you until those feelings are willing to move through for the time being. So some feelings like grief, they're going to come up over and over again. And we need to do this over and over again. But that's part of taking responsibility for ourselves, because like I said, anything we do to try and get somebody else to deal with what they're doing, then we become controlling. They become controlling back. They go into resistance, and nothing works well when we do that.
So this is part of what you're talking about when you're talking about that deeper level of self-love. It's a compassion for ourselves, and like you said, not abandoning ourselves. Whereas like the taking the hot bath or whatever, that sounds more like self-care to me, which is also a lovely thing. But this is a deeper form of self-love, and having this compassion for ourselves and really being there for ourselves in a way that maybe we hoped or wished that some other person who may not have had the capacity to do that would show up for us in a certain way. Well, some people are not capable of showing up in the way we wish for them to show up.
Yeah, and it's great when people do. I mean, we're not islands, and it's wonderful when another person can embrace us with compassion as well. But if we're not doing it, that's like a Band-Aid. If we're abandoning ourselves and they're the ones that are being compassionate, it might feel good for the moment, but it's like you talked about, I think of it like a bucket with a hole in it. They're pouring in the compassion. It's just pouring out because they're abandoning themselves. And so it might help momentarily, but it doesn't help on a very deep level.
Yeah, that really, really resonates. So I want to ask you about something. I just would love to hear your thoughts on this. I hope I'm not taking you off track of what you would normally talk about, but how does forgiveness fit into this whole equation? Because the reason I'm asking this, Margaret, is because I think a lot of times, at least in my experience in life, forgiveness, not only for other people, but especially for myself, has made the biggest difference for me. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up in a very difficult household as an only child with two narcissistic parents. And for many years, I was very angry with them. But then I started to practice inner bonding. And as I started to practice this process, I learned, like you said, to forgive myself, to realize all the things that I did from my ego wounded self. I didn't know any better, to bring love and compassion to myself. And as I did that, as I forgave myself, I found that I was naturally forgiving them. I realized that they didn't have me and say, I'm going to do everything I can to mess her up.
Right, probably not.
No, they did the best they could. They couldn't do it any better than they did. And so I reached a place of total forgiveness for them. And in fact, I reached a place where I realized that they were completely incapable of love. They were completely incapable of really being the parents that I had hoped that they would be. And I became the parent to them. I would go over, I would hold my mother, realize she never got held. And just as I didn't, but I learned how to do that for myself. She didn't. And so I was able to be nurturing to them at some point, after I had forgiven myself. I just find that when we're really taking loving care of ourselves, we're no longer angry and blaming of others, because until I was taking care of myself, I still wanted something from them. And I was still angry with them for not giving it to me. Mm-hmm. But once I was giving it to myself, I actually didn't need it from them anymore. And that's when I could see, they've suffered. They've been operating out of their fear, out of their wounded self. They've done the best they could, and I could be loving to them. And that was really great. I'm so grateful that I could do that before they died.
That's so beautiful, Margaret, because that also is, you're not going to continue to perpetuate the same patterns
Right.
that may have been going on for generations.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Absolutely.
So that's so lovely that you were able to do that and have that kind of healing with your parents. Now, it really strikes me, since the majority of the audience here are single women who want to meet and attract someone for a loving, committed partnership, kind of intimate relationship. It's not going past me that this kind of work could make a really big difference in terms of the kinds of relationships that you might attract. So I'd love for you to speak to that for a little bit.
Yeah. So people attract at their common level of self-abandonment or their common level of self-love, because it's about frequency. When we're abandoning ourselves, we've got a lower frequency. Anger and fear and anxiety and depression all have a lower frequency. Whereas when you're loving yourself, you're feeling lighter, you're feeling more joyful. We're going to attract at that common frequency. So if you really want a loving relationship rather than a codependent, needy relationship, you need to do your inner work and learn how to love yourself. And I've seen this, I've been doing this for so long, and I know you've been doing it for quite a while. I've seen it over and over again, that when people do their inner work to really learn to see and value themselves and not approach a relationship from a needy place, but from a place full of love to share with somebody, then they attract somebody who's ready to do that as well. And they create a really loving relationship.
Yeah, and we're not needing to control. We're not feeling the need to want to try to control what's happening on that other side, what they're doing, control how they're showing up. We're not feeling that energy to need to control, because not only are, as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, not only are people concerned or worried about kind of being engulfed or losing themselves in the context of a relationship, like your beautiful book title that says, "Do I have to give up me to be loved by you?" But also it allows them to just feel comfortable and confident because they're there for themselves, that they're not going to be swallowed up or engulfed or encompassed by this other person or controlled by them. I think that's a fear both men and women have in relationships.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And see, one of the things that practicing the 6 steps of inner bonding does is it develops what we call a loving adult. And a loving adult is the part of us that learns not to take rejection personally, because we're not rejecting ourselves. So we're not so afraid of rejection. And if we're not so afraid of rejection, we're not likely to give ourselves up to control the other person into not rejecting ourselves. So these 2 bottom line fears, the fear of rejection, losing the other, the fear of engulfment, losing ourselves, gets healed as we develop this strong, spiritually connected, loving adult self who can set appropriate limits against losing yourself, who doesn't just give everything up to avoid being rejected, who really knows how to take care of yourself. So it's so important to heal those fears of rejection and engulfment if you're going to have a loving relationship. Otherwise, you are going to be controlling, like you said. You're going to get angry. You're going to withdraw. You're going to resist. You're going to give yourself up and be compliant. All of these ways hurt relationships. And yet, if you're coming from that wounded place that's fearing being rejected, you're going to act out in some of these ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the ironic thing about it is then you're more likely to get rejected.
Oh, that's right.
Showing up that way. Right.
Right. We bring about the very thing we're afraid of with our controlling behavior.
Exactly. So, Margaret, I wonder if you would be open to sharing maybe just an example or a case study of a couple of situations, without revealing any personal details, but what is possible from this kind of work. I just would love a couple of specific examples, if that's okay to ask for that.
Okay. So one of the things that I work with often is the kind of codependent relationship where one person is overtly controlling, meaning they get angry. They may get angry out of jealousy. They may get angry out of the other person working too much, the other person not helping enough around the house, whatever it is, they're getting angry out of their fear of rejection. And then the other person has learned to either comply or withdraw as their end of the system. And so this is a very typical system where people come to me, one is angry, the other is withdrawn. Mm-hmm. Well, they're not connecting, you see.
No.
They're not connecting. Well, as each person learns to do, and I have many couples I'm working with exactly like that right now. One's angry, the other's withdrawn. And the withdrawn one says, well, if she wouldn't get angry, I wouldn't withdraw. And
right.
she said, well, if he wouldn't withdraw, I wouldn't get angry.
Right. It's that's the problem. They're the problem.
right. They're the problem. But you see, they brought these protective, controlling ways into the relationship. They learned to do this before they got together. And so when I work with a couple like this, I'm working with each of them on learning to take loving care of themselves, learning to heal their deeper wounds, learning to create a spiritual connection so that they can actually move into their personal power. And as they practice inner bonding and learn to do this, it's amazing how quickly their relationship can heal and they can come back together. I've worked with couples, for example, that haven't had sex in years. Mm-hmm. And they thought, oh, the juice is out of the relationship. This is never going to happen. And then they do their work and they open their hearts and they start to share their feelings with each other. And they start to be able to support each other rather than try and control each other. And suddenly all the in-love feelings come right back into the relationship. It's so beautiful to see that.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, I have been so impressed with your work, and I know of clients and other colleagues that have shared with me how powerful your work is. So I'm really honored to be able to share a little more about your work to this audience. And I know we mentioned it before, but I know you have this ebook, 4 Mistakes That Block Self-Love in Relationships. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about that. And then for everybody listening, just click on the link in the description here or on the video below, because this is a lovely gift that Margaret is giving you, which will also help you to explore going further with her work if that's something that might be of interest or benefit to you.
Yeah, so this is actually a very powerful little book that really helps people go deeper into the ways that they're treating themselves and the ways that they're treating each other. These 4 mistakes are very, very powerful that most people are making in their lives and with each other, whether it's with a partner or friends or family or whoever. And so as people read about these 4 mistakes and what else they can do other than be behaving in these ways, light bulbs go on for them. A lot of change can happen just from this ebook.
That's wonderful. Well, that's a really wonderful gift. And I would encourage all of you, if any of this is resonating with you, to take advantage of this opportunity to get access to this ebook. And I would also encourage you to explore even going deeper with Margaret's work. I know in addition to the ebook, you'll be offering some training and opportunities for people to learn more about this inner bonding process and how they can participate. And I just think your work is so incredibly valuable. And because I am so passionate about helping people, I'm so honored to be able to share work like yours, Margaret, that can make such an incredible difference for people. Because as we already mentioned, having love, experiencing love, and having that kind of intimacy in your life can be one of the greatest joys. And we also know that when we haven't been able to experience that, it can also be one of the greatest sorrows and one of the greatest pains in life as well. Well, thank you so much, Margaret. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to interview you and share a little bit more about your work. And I'm so happy that we had this opportunity to connect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been a pleasure to spend this time with you.
Yeah, me too. And again, everybody, be sure to check out the link, get your ebook. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I'd be honored to have you as a subscriber. That helps support my work and my guests. And leave your comments or questions below. And we look forward to seeing you here again soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.